You know, every once in a while, you stumble across something online that seems to just completely defy the laws of physics as we know them. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of those exact claims and the incredibly detailed, kind of mind-bending model of the universe that was built to explain it. Okay, let's get into it. It all kicks off with this number, 539%. I mean, that just immediately makes you stop and ask, 539% of what exactly? Well, here's the answer, taken right from a YouTube video demonstrating a device. It's a claim of incredible efficiency. The idea is that this machine is putting out way more energy than it's taking in. It's a concept often called overunity, and that's the big mystery we're unpacking today. And this is the device itself. It's this uniquely wound coil that, if you believe the creator, is the real-world results of a completely different way of looking at energy, magnetism, pretty much everything. Okay, a result that extraordinary needs an explanation that's just as wild, right? So let's pull back the curtain and look at the theory behind it, which is called symmetric field physics. The whole entire theory starts by taking something we all think we know, a simple magnet, and just completely turning the idea of it on its head. So forget thinking of it as this static, passive object. In this model, a magnet is an active, humming machine. They actually call it an atomic engine. The idea here is that the atoms inside the magnet aren't just sitting still. Nope, they're constantly moving, acting like these tiny microscopic propellers that are always on, always pumping out this continuous flow of energy. Now, check out what this engine is supposedly doing. It doesn't just create one single field. It's actively pumping out two totally separate and opposing fields, one from each pole. And it's those two fields working together that create the magnetic loops we're all familiar with. So, what are these two fields? Well, the theory says they're these fundamental cosmic forces. You've got a time field and a space field. One gives you the substance and the other gives you the power. So first up, you've got the time field, or the T field. This is the one that's supposed to be flowing out of the north pole of the magnet. You can think of it as the raw material of electricity. It's the stuff that's going to eventually become the current. And on the flip side, you've got the space field, or S field, and that's being pushed out of the South Pole. This field isn't the material, it's the force. It's described as this big, expansive pressure that gives you the actual push to get that current moving. So you see, it's all about this duality. The T field from the north is the path, the substance, kind of like the water in a river. And the S field from the south is the power, the pressure. That's the force that makes the river actually flow. You gotta have both. Okay, this is where the whole model gets really, really unconventional. If the T field is just the substance for the current, then where do the actual electrons come into play? The theory's answer is, well, they don't exist yet. They are born right out of the field itself. This quote from the source material just nails the idea perfectly. In this way of thinking, electrons aren't separate things floating around. They're a built-in part of the magnetic field's structure, just locked into these stable orbits, waiting for something to shake them loose. And this diagram, wow, it really shows what they're getting at. This isn't just a sketch of a magnetic field. It's being presented as a blueprint for a particle factory. The claim is that the very shape and the way these fields interact literally creates electrons out of the energy of the field. So let's trace how this particle factory is supposed to work. It all starts with that T field, the one flowing from the North Pole. You can see in the drawing how it forms these huge arching paths that loop all the way around the magnet. The theory calls them meridian circuit loops, and they're like the basic scaffolding for the whole process. Okay, now focus your eyes on that horizontal line running right through the middle. That's the magnet's equator. See where those big loops cross that line? The theory says that right at those intersection points, you get these special zones called radial centers. And these spots act like little whirlpools, pulling in and condensing energy from the field until, poof, a new particle is born. And that new particle is the electron. So if you were creating these electrons right there at the equator, how do you get them into a wire to actually do some work? Well, it's a two-step process. First, you have to shock the system, maybe with an alternating current, which is enough to knock those freshly made electrons out of their cozy orbits. Then, these other energy rings, called motion tories, supposedly grab those free electrons and start pushing them down the wire. Okay, I know that was a lot of abstract theory. So how does any of this connect back to that physical coil we saw at the very beginning? Let's finally bridge that gap between the wild diagrams and the actual hardware. And here you can see it plain as day.
The central major axis from the theory diagram on the left seems to be a direct blueprint for the vertical core of the physical coil on the right. And those donut-shaped windings, they look like they were designed specifically to create and control those motion tori we just talked about, the ones that are supposed to push the electrons.
And the experimental results they claim to get from this thing are just as remarkable as the theory itself. The video shows that 539% efficiency and says it can power a 200-watt light while the whole system only draws about 40 watts. Get this, they even say the efficiency goes up when you add more load, and that adding a simple spark gap can make the output voltage just skyrocket.
And visually, the claim is just stark. This chart shows the numbers they reported from a test. You see that tiny little bar for the 32.8 watts they put in, right next to this massive bar for the 177.2 watts they measured coming out. That's the whole Overunity idea in one single picture.
So to wrap our heads around the core idea here, symmetric field physics is basically describing a universe where magnets aren't just passive things, but are these little atomic engines that are constantly pumping out space and time fields to literally create electrons from the geometry of the field itself. And that device, that coil we've been looking at, is supposed to be the proof of concept. It's a piece of tech that's designed specifically to shake those newly birthed electrons loose, get them moving in a circuit, and in the process, supposedly tap into more energy than you put in to start with. Which really leaves us with a fascinating question, doesn't it? Are we looking at a blueprint for a completely new type of energy, one that taps into some hidden cosmic process we never knew about? Or is this an incredibly elaborate and compelling theory, built from the ground up to explain an experimental result that might just be a complex and maybe even flawed measurement? That's definitely something to think about.